Happy Monday, everyone. We're here. It's the start of another week. The drive is flooded. You need a little dinghy to get yourself from the back door to the car. But we're going to ignore that because there is blue sky, a little bit of sunshine, and we are thankful for that. So it's all going off about the BBC. I was listening to the Today programme as I was dropping the eldest off at the gym earlier. Nick Robinson is literally tripping over every word now. He's like trying so hard with his impartiality. And this is why I asked that question, and this is why I asked that question, and it's like, this is where we've gone wrong. I mean, Tim David's resigned, the head of news has resigned, but where we've gone wrong is, this is not all Nick Robinson's fault before somebody says, you can't blame him. I'm not blaming him, I'm using him as an example. We've got people that are bigger than the news in the news. So we've got names, we've got respected or non-respected journalists. We've got journalists that have been in the business for a long time who are sitting at the top of the tree and calling the shots. That's what's happening. It's happening in every institution, every corporation. It is everywhere. I mean, Beth Rigby at Sky, she is practically Rachel Reeves' best mate. Nick Robinson, when he interviews Keir Starmer, I mean, you can see that this is an on-screen relationship, but off-screen relationship is very strong. There's allegiance everywhere you turn. So we've got a Panorama story that has brought this to the fore, and it's extraordinary how that got through the net. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. As a journalist from the BBC many years ago, you had to jump through a lot of hoops before stuff went on air. You could, I mean, I'm gobsmacked at how that made it through the edit. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. I mean, that says to me that the actual way that the institution is put together these days is at the bottom level terrifying. We've clearly got people in the job that don't know the job, and we've lost contact with the journalistic code, which is you are impartial. And if you want to be a personality about it, if you want to be a personality, then you need to be doing a different job, because actually the person, the newsreader, the reporter is there to say the words of what's happening, not to cast opinion, not to give judgment, not to skew it. You just can't do that. But of course everybody has, because everybody is, because it's the fame game, it's the celebrity game, it's all about who you are, not what you are, what your role is. And you know, this will be a massive argument. People that don't like the BBC will use it as an opportunity to bring it down. People that do like the BBC will use it as an opportunity to fight hard for its survival. And a lot of people just won't care. You know, the amount of people in the comment section here that go, I've stopped paying my licence fee, I haven't paid my licence fee in years, I haven't watched the TV in years, I only watch things on YouTube. You know, it's definitely losing much of its appeal. But then there are the stalwart BBC supporters, and they've massively been let down in the same way that the British public have been let down by the government, in the same way that the NHS is letting patients down. You know, all of these massive corporations that get too big for themselves, too big for their boots, let us all down. Do I think that the BBC should topple for this? No. But I think it shouldn't topple for this for very different reasons, for its entertainment. You know, at the minute, I would argue that Channel 5 is pumping out the absolute best entertainment, and it has a much broader section of decent TV. But it ebbs and flows. It will be the BBC back in one, you know, at another time. I love Strictly Come Dancing, not even going to hide behind that. And I think that, and the Traitors, I mean, God, absolutely addicted to it. So I think if we need to be careful what we wish for, because a lot of this stuff isn't going to go to another house, or it is going to go to another house, but it's not going to be done as well, because ITV has an agenda, Channel 4 has an agenda, Channel 5 has, they all have one. So it is very much careful what you wish for. But in terms of editorial standard, well, it's a shit show, isn't it? You know, that is, and will carry on being so grossly influenced by the individual who is sitting behind the mic or in front of the camera. And we look at Question Time. You know, my other half adores Fiona Bruce, loves her. She comes on Antiques Roadshow and it's like, oh. But on Question Time, it's just I'm shouting at the television because it is so biased. It is so skewed. And yet, because someone comes across as a nice person, we sort of forgive a lot of that. And do you know what? On a different platform, that's fine. But it's like Switzerland is neutral. So if you're going to say you're neutral, you have to be neutral. And if you want to not be neutral, that's completely fine. You are allowed your opinion. You are allowed to say what you think. Look at me. We all know that I'm not remotely neutral. We all know that I do not support this Labour government. We don't know who I do support because at the minute I don't know who I support, and I share that openly and honestly with you. But we absolutely know that I am not a Labour supporter. And if I was on mainstream TV, that couldn't be a thing because I wouldn't be doing my job. If I was on the BBC, my job would not be about Anna. It would be nothing to do with who I am. It would be to do with getting the news to you and getting the news to you in its pure factual form, which is something that I hold very true, actually. It's the values, it's why I got into journalism. You know, I started training back in 1997 and it wasn't a case of sort of learning how to write a story. We did politics, we did sociology, we did law. I mean, it was a massive, learning to be a journalist is actually, or it was, a lot harder than you think it is. There's a lot that you got to remember. And yeah, it feels a little bit like if you've got the right look and the right voice these days, you can do it. And perhaps I'll do a live on why I'm not at the BBC anymore. Of course there's a backstory. Of course it's not scandal, but I haven't really talked about it. And I haven't ever really talked about it because I still haven't really come to terms with it. I still haven't really accepted and been able to accept that somebody made a decision that I was not going to go any further based on me being congruent, me being honest. I've sort of teased that now. I need to tell you, it was basically they used to do lunches at the BBC, feedback lunches, and somebody from each department would, not all at the same time, but one lunch it would be factual entertainment, children's BBC, news, and costume or what have you, and you'd go and have this lunch around a big table with the very important person. You'd be asked questions for your feedback and you'd give it. Now, retrospectively, knowing why, my spicy wiring and why I am who I am, how I am who I am, what, understanding my neurodivergency, I understand now that when they asked for our feedback, they weren't asking for our feedback. They didn't actually really want to know, but I didn't at the time. I thought if you asked me my opinion and my feedback, I would give it, so I did. And I effectively said that, Children's BBC in the mornings, I was doing the breakfast at Children's BBC, we had the biggest share of audience. We had the biggest audience of the lot over all the channels. So if we had a bit more budget, we would be able to do an awful lot more. I mean, we weren't called the broom cupboard for nothing. We came from Studio 9, which was sort of not much bigger than my kitchen. And we were cobbled together. We really didn't have a budget, but we made some great TV. And I was asked what we could do to improve things. And I said, well, I don't understand why we don't have any more money. I don't understand why we're not further up the tree. We have all these viewers in the mornings. They're tuning in for us. Children's BBC, they're not tuning in for the news. They're not tuning in for anything else. They're tuning in for us. So why can't we? Well, that went down like a fart in a lift. And Alan Yentol told my editor, she's not going anywhere. She's trouble. That's it. That's her. I didn't find this out until a long time after. I think I limped through about another year and then I was waved off on my merry way, goodbye, and that was that. But that, that's back in the early 2000s, that was happening. And it was about who you are, what you say, if you say the right thing, if you support the right team, and if you don't, you're out. And I was out, the end. So this outrage is, perhaps long overdue. Perhaps people are feeling as though for years and years and years they haven't been listened to and now they want to be listened to. And this is what happens when people aren't listened to. They get angry and then they explode. I was listened to, I was disregarded, and I was found to be surplus to requirements. So that was, my children's BBC career over. And that's hard. And particularly as I was sort of like a young 20-something, and I was just cast aside. Job, security, money, everything. You're off. Anyway, as it happens, I think I gave a big fat finger to Alan Yentop. I went to Sky for a bit. Oh, that was scary. But I went to lots of other broadcasters and, you know, found my feet. But do I have fond memories of the BBC? Not the corporation, no. Absolutely not. The people? Yeah, I do. The potential? Total. They have got the potential. They have got the history. They have got the hallmarks of being incredible, but they've totally lost their way because they are all biased. There is a total agenda at the BBC, and it's a political agenda. And you don't just want one person resigning. That's a full clear out. That is a complete let's start from scratch. And if they do that, then yeah, they could have a chance. But at the minute, just changing one at the top is going to make no difference. It has to start from the bottom up. And, well, watch this space.